Hello, everyone. Welcome to the IAB webinar series. For today's webinar, we'll be talking about what does artificial intelligence mean for day-to-day marketing. My name's Eva Wu, Director at IAB Mobile Center of Excellence, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. We've got a fantastic lineup of thought leaders who will be speaking today, and I'll introduce them one by one before their respective segment. A couple notes on logistics before we get started. Everyone is currently muted. If you would like to ask a question, please write to us through the moderate chat on the control panel. We'll answer some questions as we go along and also queue up some for the Q&A session at the end. One of the questions we get a lot is whether a recording of the webinar will be available, and we'd like to let you know upfront that the answer is yes. We'll send you a follow-up email with the recording after the webinar. So now going back to the content of the webinar, today's topic is what does artificial intelligence mean for day-to-day marketing? Because we all get it, AI is the new shiny object. Every week or even every day, we hear or read something about AI. But what are some practical applications of AI for marketing purposes? And what are some strategies for you to leverage AI to establish a competitive advantage? So those are the kind of questions IAB AI Working Group sets out to answer. And yes, for those of you who don't know, IAB created its first artificial intelligence / machine learning for marketing purposes working group back in August this year. And the group is co-chaired by Adherent, the Weather Company, and Albert. This group has over 100 IAB members and is currently developing a document that seeks to demystify AI / machine learning for marketing and advertising purposes. So if you're interested in learning more about it or joining the working group, please email me after the webinar. So for the agenda for today's webinar, we're going to first learn the basics of AI for marketing from Matt Groner, VP of Product at Adherent, as he talks about what is AI, how it is different from machine learning, and why AI and machine learning are important for the advertising industry right now. And then we'll get a little bit technical and take a crash course on the AI technology with Sarah Robertson, VP of Product Engineering at Xaxis, and she'll also share her agency perspectives and some business strategies to align with the current technology capabilities. And we'll wrap up with an interview with Judith Hammerman, SVP of Data Commercialization and Programmatic Sales Solution at Time Inc., to hear her thoughts on how publishers are adopting AI and machine learning for advertising as well as content development. And as always, there's a Q&A session, but as I mentioned, feel free to ask questions and provide comments anytime during the webinar, and there's no need to wait until the end. We'll address some questions along the way. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Matt Groner, VP of Product at Adherent, and co-chair of IAB AI Working Group, who will give us an overview of the what, why, and how of AI for advertising purposes. Take it away, Matt.
Thank you very much, Ava. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining today. So as Ava mentioned, yes, I am one of the co-chairs of the IAB Working Group on Artificial Intelligence, and we are working really to set some definitions right now for the industry so we can all be talking about the same thing, define what AI is, what machine learning is, deep learning, and give some guidance about how people can activate AI and some best practices and identify different practitioners in there. We have a draft document that we've been working on for a while, and I think a finalized version of that draft will be going out to committee members for comment before we publish in January. But we're always happy to have additional members join, and you know, you can contact the IAB and become a member and get access to that. So yeah, we're on to the next slide. So Ava, if you could click again.
Yes.
And So if you if you go onto Google and search on Will AI, you can see a lot of the questions that people are asking out there, and there's a lot of buzz around artificial intelligence and machine learning, and you know, is it going to replace people? What's going to happen? Where is it? What's going on? This affects marketing and other areas as well. Next. And again, so artificial intelligence really is a branch of computer science dealing with the simulation of intelligent behavior. It attempts to model human intelligence in computer systems with structured and unstructured data, and enabling machines to make decisions, reason, and learn based on the data that they're taking in. Complete tasks efficiently, and really identify patterns and make mass amounts of data actionable. And Sarah is going to take you through in the next segment really how the nuts and bolts of that happens. So next, machine learning is a type of artificial intelligence that provides that loop, that ability for the AI to continually learn and improve based on the data that continues to come in. And that's really what it is. Machine learning focuses on the development of computer programs that can change when exposed to new data. If we go to the next slide, you'll see this map that was put together by Stanford University of sort of the different aspects of the AI landscape here. So within machine learning, you have these different types of deep learning, supervised and unsupervised. You have all the different sorts of natural language processing that affect the way people speak with computers. If you've used Alexa or Siri or Google Home, this is all based on natural language processing. Expert systems and machine learning are, no, let's go back. Expert systems and machine learning are really two of the areas that are we focus on heavily in marketing, because these are the ones that help make the decisions and optimizations as part of the marketing ecosystem. But there's tremendous opportunities also in vision and speech, planning, and robotics as well. Okay, now we can go on to the next slide. So whether you realize it or not, you are really exposed to you know, artificial intelligence every day, and it impacts us on a daily basis. So if you use Spotify or any other of the music services, Apple's music service or any others, anytime you get a music recommendation that's based on artificial intelligence, taking data in on what music you are listening to or what you've saved and favorited, and other people who have similar music patterns and what they're listening to and what you're not, and getting suggestions from that. If you're using Waze or Google Maps to get directions or route around traffic, that's another example of AI in your daily life. That is AI on the fly, finding you the best route from point A to point B. And there are some folks now doing work in personal finance investing, taking all that data that you generate from your credit cards and your other financial activities to give you optimized personal financial recommendations. So if we go on to the next slide. What's really powering this AI revolution, other than the, sort of the underlying technology we have, is this tremendous growth in data. So since 2006 and 2007, with the advent of Facebook and the first smartphones, we've seen a massive growth in data, and that 50 times growth in data from 2010 to 2020 is what's allowing us to build AI on top of it. Very little of the data is analyzed or used now, but AI is what is allowing us to take that data and make it useful and actionable. Next slide. Next. And there's also a tremendous amount of capital flowing into the AI space. And this isn't just AI for marketing, but this is all AI. It's about, actually, I think it's about up to 55 billion at this point this year. So there's tremendous interest, there's tremendous innovation going on because of all this capital that's flowing in. And those AI improvements are really flowing everywhere. So all the different areas of AI that I showed you before on the map, and really, a lot of that is having impact on marketing as well. So if we go to the next slide, and we see tremendous interest from organizations. They are all looking to optimize what they're doing and do a better job of planning using machine learning and AI to gain a competitive advantage. So if we delve a little bit more into marketing, so if we go on to the next slide. So in terms of AI use for marketing right now, there's 4 main areas where we're using AI through the marketing process today: audience definition, targeting, creative, and optimization. So if we go to the next slide, in audience definition, in terms of any of the data you have on your audience, your customers, can all be used to define your audience for your marketing messaging. So whether you're using a DMP or something else to activate that, looking at the masses of data you're collecting there and the attributes of those audience members, we at Adherent build models around that to define the audience that we seek to target when we activate any sort of campaigns, multiple models to build out multiple specific segments of audience for different campaigns as well, to find the exact folks that we want to target for effective media messaging. So from the audience definition, we go on to targeting, and that's where we're looking at those messaging opportunities in real time. So we've got the data about the audience, and we're combining that with the audience data that comes in from the exchanges that we're able to activate on. So all the information we have about location, device, what the context they're in, third-party data available, combining that with the audience to score every opportunity to provide a marketing message to a user, and at scale predict who's going to be the right person and the right opportunity to reach. So if we go on to that, once we've decided who and where to buy, it's really what message to serve to them. And this is where you have some AI that, directly is viewable to the consumer. So by doing a predictive creative that goes well beyond the capabilities of dynamic creative, this is where you can have literally thousands to tens of thousands of different combinations of creative elements, from the copy, from the click-through, to the offer, to the images, to everything else, and having AI and machine learning using models and the data they have about the user, about the context, and the creative to combine those attributes on the fly to create a custom creative experience for each user that's going to get them to activate or achieve the campaign KPIs in the best way possible. So this is something that we do every day. This is an example of something we've done. There are also others who are doing this. So there's a Watson execution. If we click again, so Watson and Campbell's, we're using weather information to target folks with soup recipes and a combination of personalized recipes based on weather and location and time. And they're even extending that with Watson capabilities to the next phase, which is having that natural language processing, which is allowing people to communicate with the ads, ask questions about the soups or the products through the actual ad. Okay, next. And then finally, the last and one of the most important pieces of applying AI and ML to marketing is the optimization. So once you've done the audience definition and the targeting and delivered the creative, is to take that information that's generated from all that and optimize everything you're doing. So all that data gets fed back into the entire process to optimize audience definition, targeting, improve the creative, and around again. And this is something that, you know, with the right modeling, with the right AI, can be done automatically to have those models learn and improve every aspect of the marketing. So that's how a lot of AI and ML is currently activated as part of the online marketing message stack. What's coming? There's a tremendous opportunity in all different aspects, but if we go to the next slide, one of the areas that I am really bullish on, because I think it combines all these different areas of AI, is AR, augmented reality. So there have been some executions of augmented reality. If anyone's played Pokemon Go, or even, you know, Snapchat filters and things where you're using a mobile device to overlay images or other things on top of the real world that are not there, that's all augmented reality. Now, most of those executions are not really using AI yet, but the coming ones will be. So using a combination of voice, image recognition, pattern recognition, unsupervised learning, and expert systems is going to combine all of these to allow marketers to interact with people in the real world through their mobile devices. There's a huge opportunity here to show location, to overlay things like that, to guide people, to really create worlds that aren't there that allow people to engage with brands. And I think it's something you're going to start to see explode in the end of 28 and really take off in 2019 as well. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much. I don't know, Ava, if you want to do questions now or throw it directly to Sarah.
Sure, yeah, thank you very much, Matt. I think this is a great start to the webinar and a very nice setup for the rest of the program. So thank you very much. Now we wanted to get a little geeky and take a mini course on the AI technology, but that's only the first half of the next presentation. So for the second half, then we'll also learn some business strategies to take advantage of that AI technology. With that, I would like to introduce Sarah Robertson, VP of Product Engineering at Xaxis. The floor is yours, Sarah.
Thanks, Eva. All right, hello everyone. A little bit about me. I work at Xaxis, which is a programmatic advertising company in the WPP family. I run a team of product people and engineers. We're building an optimization product called Copilot. It's an artificial intelligence execution platform to help optimize advertising campaigns. And I have been traveling around to different Xaxis offices teaching a Artificial Intelligence 101 course to try to get everybody more comfortable talking about these concepts. And I have shortened that content for today's webinar. So I hope that you find it valuable, although I'm going to run through it pretty quickly. So the first thing I'd like to say is, even amongst experts, engineers, and data scientists in this field, there's still a lot of disagreement about what things mean and what actually defines AI, I think that what's important is to understand the different arguments and pick your own perspective so that you can move forward with a vocabulary you're comfortable with. So what I'm sharing with you today is what Xaxis has landed on as our perception and position on AI, and you can feel free to do with it what you like. So first of all, the most important thing I'd like to share, if you don't remember anything else from this section, remember this one slide. Most of the recent progress in AI is simply turning input A into output B. It's important to know that it's not magic. And here I have some examples of inputs turning into outputs provided by the fabulous Andrew Ng. If you'd like to learn more about AI, feel free to Google him. He's got a lot of great things to read. So in this example, I'll give you one. The input could be an English sentence, and the output is a French sentence. The application of that is language translation. Even things that sound really complex, like self-driving cars, are really just taking a lot of inputs from cameras and other sensors and outputting positions of other cars or recommended actions to take. So AI gets complex when you have a lot of small systems processing inputs and outputs that boil up into one seemingly intelligent system. This is my version of what the AI stack looks like. So you've got a model that you have trained on some data with an algorithm. You feed the model an input, it gives you an output. And I'm going to go through some of these vocabulary words in a little bit. This whole thing, the input and output, is called machine learning. AI can be lots of these different machine learning components combined together to make something more sophisticated. But I think even one successful machine learning model counts under the label of artificial intelligence. So I would say one or more equals AI. So what is machine learning? The simplest definition is it's a program that consumes data and makes predictions. Consuming the data is your input, making the prediction is your output. So if we think of an analogy of going to school, you could go to school for an entire semester and sit through the class and maybe sleep or something, and we have no way of knowing if you actually learned anything. That is the computer consuming data. Sure, it could consume data all day long, but we don't know if it learned anything until it tells us something. So then you move on to taking a test. This is where you let your teacher know that you actually gleaned some knowledge from this semester that you attended. The correlate in machine learning would be when the computer makes a prediction. So it learned a bunch of stuff from consuming the data and eventually makes a prediction. Those two things alone are the most basic version of a machine learning algorithm executing. If you want to get slightly more advanced, you could say someone or something takes a look at that prediction and says whether it was good or not. So your test gets graded. And in a really good artificial intelligence system, those scores that say whether the predictions are good or not feed back into the beginning as a new input to improve the machine learning so that its next set of predictions gets even better. So it's learning from its own predictions and improving itself every time it receives new data. Types of algorithms. And again, since I had to summarize this content a bit, I skipped through some vocabulary of unsupervised and supervised, but I'll try to touch on it right now. So unsupervised learning is basically when you train a model, but the right answers are not included. So an example of that would be, tell me what my customers have in common, right? There's no right answer to that. You can't feed the model a bunch of existing commonalities. Supervised learning is where you train a model, but the right answers are included. What cart values lead to a checkout? So that is known. I know the right answers because I can look at all of the cart values from the past that led to a checkout and feed the model with existing factual data. Within those two worlds, there's four main categories of algorithms that most people are working on. The first one is clustering. I want to put things into categories, but I don't know what they are. So I have a folder full of images of animals, but I don't know what animals they are. So I just ask the computer to make buckets and try to figure out which animals look similar to each other. Classification I want to put things into categories and I already know what they are. So I have a folder full of images of animals, but I also have one with pictures of cats and one with pictures of dogs. And I say, go through this folder and tell me which ones are cats and which ones are dogs. So you can see how the right answer was included in the learning process for the second phase. Reduction is I have too much data and I don't know what's important. This is something that data scientists spend a lot of time on, just sifting through mass amounts of data, trying to figure out which points are actually useful or predictive of something. And regression is what most of the optimization techniques in advertising are built around. I want to predict numbers, and I have examples of numbers already. What cart value leads to a checkout? Will this user click on my ad? How much should I bid for this impression? Those are all numbers-based predictions that I have historical data about that I can train the model on. And I know I ran through that super quick, so if you have any questions, please post it in the chat for this webinar. This is the best kept secret in the world of AI. Algorithms are free. Most top researchers publish their algorithms, via research papers in scientific journals, and they're freely available for anyone to use. As soon as they get published, some clever hacker goes, reads the paper, and writes a little piece of open source code that lets any of us take advantage of that new innovation. So I'm sure you're all on a laptop right now. You could go start downloading algorithms. They're free. The trouble is that an algorithm is useless unless you have data to train it on. So access to a scale of rich and interesting data is a big differentiator in the AI competition space. And the second one is talent. So you could go download the algorithm, but you might not know how to execute it. And if you could figure that out, it's hard to figure out how to scale it. So if you have a lot of data, how many servers do you need to execute it? That kind of thing. So really, the algorithms themselves are very similar, and there's not a lot of difference between the math that happens from one company to the next. The big differences are in the data they use to train those models and the talent that they use to implement the algorithms and tune and configure them to solve their specific business goals. I have one theme for my presentation today, and that is that education is important. Even when you are a top-tier successful executive, you have to constantly educate yourself on what's new, what's happening, and make sure that you're well informed so that you can make good decisions about which direction you want to go, so that you can evaluate vendors appropriately, and so that you can design strategies that take advantage of things that are out there. I highly recommend everyone take a basic data science course. They have some that are technical, that are based on coding, but they have plenty that aren't, that are just a business-focused data science course. I sent my entire engineering team to the General Assembly Intro to Data Science course, and I took it with them as well. And it was the best investment I ever made in my team. It changed the way that we were able to talk to each other, the way that we were able to talk to our data scientists, and the way that we were able to present this information to managers and executives to make it understandable and really take the magic out of AI so that it's something accessible. So here's my AI crash course summary. Most AI just turns input A into output B. Machine learning consumes data and makes predictions. Algorithms are free. Data and talent are the real differentiators. And take a data science class. I promise that you will love it. All right, the second section. How do you design an intelligent strategy based on what you're learning about the capabilities of AI? So, a good AI strategy requires knowing what's possible so you can take full advantage of it. Again, back to the theme of making sure that you're educated. It's hard to design a marketing or advertising approach if you don't know that certain things exist that you could work into that strategy. So it's important to always stay up to date with things that are emerging in the industry so that you can design the most cutting edge strategies and definitely maintain that competitive advantage that Eva referenced earlier. And again, once you know what's possible, you're in a better position to start really pushing the limits and innovating in the space, whether you have your own data scientists or not. Here's some current applications of AI in advertising. And these loosely map to the ones that Matt referenced, except I added one called Insights. So audience is where you can do things like lookalike modeling. I have a set of customers that completed a checkout, run a model to predict other types of customers that look like those ones that are more likely to actually complete a checkout. Creative, there's a lot of exciting things happening in the space of creative around AI, dynamic creative, multivariate testing. I had like 7 other things listed here, but I wanted to sort of reduce the slide. But creative is a really exciting space where AI is being applied. Buying is what I spend most of my time doing. So figuring out what to bid for users based on a moment in time, the context of the user, the ad that I'm trying to serve, so that I can get the most bang for my buck, right? So trying to get a lower CPC or a lower CPA, AI is absolutely wonderful at things like that. Also in balancing multiple and potentially conflicting goals against each other. And finally, insights. No strategy would be complete if you didn't eventually analyze how you did and look for some insights to improve your strategy moving forward. So there's exciting things happening in that space around predictive analytics and pattern recognition that will hopefully help inform you on the next go around of what you could do better or different. So the first thing you need to do before you even start creating an AI strategy is come up with your goals. And here I have examples of good goals and bad goals. In my opinion, good goals should map directly to business outcomes. Make more sales, get more renewals, increase traffic, drive engagements. Bad goals are things that map directly to platform capabilities. Get more clicks, reach my audience, buy cheap impressions. These types of goals are things that people use as a proxy to actual business outcomes. And I feel like it's something we've been programmed to think of because of how the programmatic landscape has existed for the last few years. We think that CTR means something, but in reality, it doesn't. The only thing that means something is, am I making more sales? Am I moving the needle for my business? And maybe CTR is the right metric to use as a proxy to the thing you really want, but maybe it's not. You need to keep an open mind when figuring out how to map your business outcomes to the actual platform capabilities. So let's say that I've designed a strategy, or I'd like to design a strategy on my business goal of make more sales. The normal funnel is something like this, right? Find some prospective customers, deliver my message, get them engaged, and convert them to buyers. Under each of these steps in the strategy, there's several AI capabilities that you could use to try to address that specific step. So for prospective customers, I could build some lookalike models. For delivering my message, I could try multivariate testing. I want to get them engaged. I could run optimization against engagements as my success metric. I'd like to convert them. I could run optimization against conversions as my success metric, right? So those are the same 2 AI capabilities, but I use a different outcome as the thing that I'm training the model to optimize towards. This whole thing is the strategy that maps to your good business outcome. These individual things are tactics which map to platform capabilities. So an important thing to remember, you should measure your strategy holistically against those business outcomes. But you measure individual tactics individually against advertising metrics. Or I'm sure in the marketing space, it would be against marketing metrics. But be careful not to confuse these 2 things, because at the end of the day, a CTR means nothing to your business, but it could mean everything to a tactic. Here's an example of how I would pick metrics based on the tactics that I'm running. So let's say I'm using a lookalike model to try to get more prospective customers. The question I need to ask about whether that was a successful approach or not did the lookalikes engage more than general prospecting? That would be the assumption, right? That people who were successfully modeled against completed customers would engage more than just some random pool of people I found on the internet. To answer that question, there's three things I might look at. In-target reach. So did I actually reach the people in my lookalike pool? The session time that they had on my site, the number of page views, etc. So engagement metrics. Versus if I'm doing a test to compare the performance of several different creatives, the question would be, did some of my creatives perform measurably better than others? So in that scenario, I'm looking for the creative that performs the best, in which I first of all have to make sure that it was viewable, because anything that wasn't viewable should be thrown out of my analytics data pool. And secondly, I would expect I'd get a higher click-through rate on creatives that were more successful than creatives that weren't. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but I think it's important to understand that you're never going to have the same three set of metrics that apply to everything in your entire strategy. It's really like little building blocks that map to AI capabilities that have their own success metrics that sometimes overlap, but oftentimes don't. So to summarize, make sure you stay up to date on current applications of AI in advertising. It's the only way you're going to be able to take advantage of them and be competitive in this space. Try your hardest to define good goals that map directly to business outcomes. Design your strategy from the very beginning to take advantage of AI. Something that you can do and once you've already kicked off your big campaign execution. Measure the success of your strategy holistically and measure the success of your tactics individually. And that's it. Thank you guys very much. Also, here's my contact info. Reach out on LinkedIn if you have any additional questions.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Thank you, Sarah, for all the valuable insights. I especially love the metaphor you used for to distinguish AI and machine learning, and really appreciate you generously sharing all this knowledge and making it very fun to listen to. So we do have a question for you. So you mentioned that data and talent are the two things that distinguish good AI versus bad. And so do you have any advice, especially for marketers, on how to harness data?
Sure. So it starts with collecting all the data you possibly can and just becoming a data hoarder, which is what everyone has been doing since big data became a popular thing. But then you find yourself in a situation of not knowing what's valuable or not. So a data scientist can really help you with that. The algorithm that I talked about that was called reduction is really just a process of crunching all of those data points and scoring them based on which ones are valuable to the goal that you're trying to get. So it's like it tries to figure out which parts of the data are the most predictive to the thing that you want. If you don't have a data scientist on your team, there are certainly firms that can help you, that can do that work for you, or you could outsource it. But that's basically it. There's a scientific process that you go through to wade through the data and figure out what's valuable.
Okay, great. That's very helpful. Thanks, Sarah. And now that we've heard an agency's perspective, let's hear from a publisher about how they see artificial intelligence learning influence the advertising value chain and publishing world at large. So I'd like to welcome Judith Hammerman, SVP of Data Commercialization and Programmatic Sales Solution at Time Inc. for a virtual fireside chat / interview. Judith, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. And Sarah, really nice job. Just really clearly laid out and just a great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely a great way to set up for our conversation here as well. And so, Judith, can you start by telling us then about how AI and machine learning fit within your organization so we know where you're coming from?
So we're using it in a couple different ways today, and to a certain extent, we've been using it for a while, especially NLP Foundry, which is our content creation studios, has been using NLP for a while to listen to market sentiment and adjust content accordingly. Those insights are incredibly important for us to help direct what we create, and gives us a good basis for how we go ahead and do custom content and native content for our advertisers. We're also starting to experiment with a few vendors for predictive targeting. Technologies that can help tell us what segments are best used for any desired outcome. And for us, it's really about it's everything from adjusting audience targeting for our advertisers to selling subscription, right? So that audience, looking at how we use predictive technologies to help develop audience development for sites, to selling subscriptions, to targeting that we do for our advertising. That's all part of our adjusting the ways that we target audiences today.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great. Yeah, so you mentioned using AI and machine learning for content development for the editorial side, but also for advertising, right, to understand audiences and kind of really echo what Matt and Sarah mentioned earlier about understanding the audience and even optimize creatives. So so those are, I think,
and I would say those creatives there, this is where content is a form of creative, right? And that's so it's not just about creative as an ad unit, but it's creative as content in and of itself.
Yeah, that's very interesting, especially with the native format where sometimes you have content studio that works on editorial and advertising at the same time. And can you give us an example to just really bring it to life in terms of for the use of marketing and advertising, just because most of our audience today are.
Sure. I mean, I think the one that so many of the folks who are on the line today can really connect to is simple, digital advertising and the buying of digital advertising. If you're using a DSP, which most advertisers today are using a DSP for some portion of their advertising buying, you're already on the path of using AI as because there's some powered solution there for real-time bidding. So that's one that I think a lot of advertisers can kind of connect to right away. But it's interesting. So Forrester states that if you really look at the cross-channel personalized customer engagements today, that they just frankly exceed human cognitive capacity. So it's really about the finding of patterns and data across the entire funnel, right? So looking at it and looking at everything from contact centers to direct mail to e-commerce to email to mobile apps to social. Again, it's really about how do you find those patterns and data across your entire customer ecosystem. It's interesting because I think that one of the things that folks think about is it's going to be this machine that's doing everything for us. And in many ways, some of the best uses of AI are simply about listening, right? Fortune data sheet came out this morning and actually was talking about Schwab and how they're using AI in their offering today, and where many folks would think that it's about AI picking a stock, really all that the way that they're using it most effectively is listening to customer conversations, seeing the data around that particular customer, seeing that that customer might be at a certain stage of life with certain investing goals, and then maybe just think that maybe the machine is just learning that they may be overly weighted in any one stock and giving a suggestion. So, the listening piece of this to me is such a crucial and important part of of just good basic AI strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very insightful. And so we talked about AI and machine learning for marketers, and I think for some of our audience are also from the publishing world, and for them a key concern is monetization. And
Mm-hmm.
can you tell us then some of the current challenges or opportunities to leverage artificial intelligence or machine learning for commercialization or monetization?
Yeah, I mean, I think that some of what I spoke to initially, insights is a big part of this, right? This is really how we, it's something that we look at on a very granular level. What can we learn, and how do we take those learnings and help drive more revenue, right? But it's something also where I think that sometimes what's challenging in some more established companies is simply a cultural bias, right? If it kind of like this is the way we've been doing it, and so kind of it works, right? And so why would we want to include further machine learning? It's interesting. IBM is recently out with a study that talks about organizations and embracing AI, and about they talk about 40% of all organizations have no AI enabled today, and it's not surprising that those are also the organizations that are less likely to be innovative, less likely to leverage the analytics that they draw within the organization, less likely to personalize for customers, less likely to co-create with their partners. All those things that we hold of value in the marketing organization today are, overall less likely to do so. And so the embracement of it is such an important part from a commercialization standpoint going forward.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting. And then, so, right, you talk about certain other organizations that's not so AI savvy or aware. And then in 2018, how are you going to empower your organization to be more AI savvy?
So we try to do a lot of learning sessions with our teams across the board. It's helpful when you have editorial product like Fortune, or other ways that we kind of have that content and that constant source of learning right here in the organization. Sarah mentioned how important it is to continually learn. And I can't agree more. It's such an important part of moving forward. But we do these with our vendors. We do these kind of mini TED Talks where vendors can come into our offices, into our main auditorium, and present to us. And we recently had a session with one of our large tech vendors. I'm always blown away by what our people are thinking about how to use technology and what to do next. Sarah also mentioned talent, right? And that the true differentiators are the data being used and the talent that's used to configure. I would also say the talent that simply starts to say, what if we could, right? What if we could try to do XYZ with this instead? And so having those kinds of creative thinkers in house who can really embrace the thought leadership that we bring to the org to teach folks, that's an important part of success, right? Those two coming together.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so mini TED Talks from different technology companies and just constantly learning, and then asking yourself, what if we could do this, right? Sort of rhetorical questions, and
Mm-hmm.
very fun. Yeah, that's great. And so in right now, voice in artificial intelligence and machine learning is a very hot topic. So what does where does voice fit in for you? Is it more than just smart speakers like Alexa and Siri? Can you envision one day where there's only voice and no keypads at all?
Yeah. So I think voice is super important. There was that running joke that when Whole Foods was acquired by Amazon, it was that Jeff Bezos said to Alexa, instead of saying something like "buy me something from Whole Foods," it said "buy Whole Foods," right? And that's how the acquisition happened, right? But it's really, when you think it's not just about, there's sort of two things, in my opinion, that are happening. You've got the forms like Alexa and Google Home and Siri. That's all, it's all sort of becoming very much a part of our cultural fabric. It's also impacting, I think, how the next generation just really works with technology. If you have a kid in the home, and I happen to have two, you see very quickly that they actually don't type a lot. They talk a lot. So they're very comfortable with talking into AI, and getting the information that they need right there, without ever, or clicking on any kind of screen. So just looking at consumption and looking at how the next generation consumes, I think that voice will continue to become a very important part of how it all moves forward.
Right. Yeah. I feel so old now. Not up on my game. I still type too much.
Yeah. It's
be the boss. Just give them the command over.
Right.
Okay, that's great. That's very interesting. And then I think I have one last question, which is, we have the Artificial Intelligence Working Group at the IAB. And from your perspective at Time Inc., what do you think is the most important area for that working group to focus on in 2018?
Yeah, I would say let's get to low-hanging proof of concept, right? That Sarah mentioned in her conversation, how setting the right goals is important, and I agree with that. But also, not trying to boil the ocean, right? Let's just get to some good basic. How could we work as a as a working group to do something that's achievable, and that's scalable across across IAB membership. To me, that would be an important part of how we think about focus for these first couple of initiatives.
Got it. Okay, noted. I'll definitely take it back to the team. Okay, thank you very much, Judith. I think that's all the time we have for our segment. So really appreciate you sharing your perspective from the sell side, from the publishing world, and I think it complements the rest of the presentation very well. And so with that, actually, we just have one last question. I believe it's for all the speakers today. It originated, though, from Sarah's presentation about the good goals and bad goals. And we talked about, having clicks still sometimes as the goal for advertising campaigns. And I think marketers realize that, they're guilty as charged as well for sometimes using that as one of the metrics for their campaigns. So so this is a question for all of you. What do you think we can do to move beyond that?
Let me take the first run at this one. This is Sarah.
Sure. Yes, please.
So oh my God, I hate when people are just chasing the clicks, but it's so prolific in the industry, it's hard to convince them to do otherwise. The big problem is that if a click is your metric, people are going to start to game the system on your behalf to get clicks for you. And if you ever look at the numbers and see the bounce rate of your clickers, it's ridiculous. So why do I care if people clicked the ad if they never even load the page and consume any content that I was actually trying to get them to see on the other side? A part of that is, obviously fraud and bot traffic, but another part of that is people just fat fingering ads on their mobile devices, right? They had no intention of clicking the ad. It was an accident. I think that if you start to measure the success of your advertising campaigns on quality engagement metrics, which is why I listed things like session time, page views, etc., you're going to find that you're actually driving quality traffic to the thing you want instead of just some number that is easy to game.
Hi, this is Matthew. So Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I agree. Engagement's a really important part of this, right? And I think us getting better as marketers at measuring what engagement really means to the business outcome is really important. That we've become so focused on, on the last click, on the actual purchase, et cetera, that we don't really talk about or spend enough time focused on what does it mean for when a customer first begins their journey with us and engages with us. So as we move through, I think that getting away from that I mean, to me, CTR at this juncture, to the point, it's what is it even saying at this juncture? But defining really strong goals as a marketer is probably the route we all need to go, versus just looking at the metric of CTR.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sarah and Judith are absolutely correct. Those online metrics don't do anything. They don't click, don't sell products. Neither does in-view time. We've certainly worked with a number of marketers who want to optimize towards those things. And we always push them towards really what their goals are, whether it's a sales goal, whether it's getting people in stores, identifying those things, and then working to get the actual data around their goals. So it's not an easy lift, but anytime that you can connect that offline data or purchase data or real world data to your marketing campaign, it's a huge boost over using those other sort of proxies like click-through rate or in-view time as the success of the campaign. And there's a whole number of data partners and companies out there that can do that. We work with a couple. It's why we've been able to introduce products like cost per incremental visit and some other products like that connect those actual real world KPIs to the marketing campaign. And that's really the best practice there.
Okay. Yeah, appreciate it. So I think that's all the time we have for today. I think one of the things that we didn't address much today in the webinar is some creative examples of customization. I think maybe that could be a next step and takeaway for us in the next webinar in 2018. So again, we'll follow up with you all with a link to the recording. And I'd like to thank our speakers today for sharing their valuable insights, and thank you all for your attention. And we'll see you soon at the future events, and happy holidays.